Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are jumping right into a pretty intense local government dispute out of Jefferson County, Washington, and we're doing it using a whole bunch of public documents. We're going to see how a plan to improve community health care somehow spiraled into secret deals, a silenced official, and eventually a full-blown legal battle.
Okay, let's just get right to the heart of it. The whole story really kicks off with this really dramatic moment. And let's be clear, this wasn't some technical glitch or an accident. It was a deliberate act, and it becomes the flashpoint for this huge controversy over transparency and public trust.
Right? That is the big question. How did we get here? So in this explainer, that's what we're going to do. We're going to unpack the timeline, get into the core of the conflict, and all of it is based on the compiled source material. We're going to trace every step, from a confidential proposal to a very public explosion.
All right, so part one. A secret alliance. You see, this whole thing gets started not in a public forum, but with a major proposal that was put together behind closed doors. Totally away from the taxpayers who, would ultimately be footing the bill. First things first, it's really important to understand what a public hospital district even is. As you can see, these are not private companies. They're a form of local government, a municipal corporation, kind of like a city. And because of that, they're governed by some very specific laws that are designed to protect the public's right to know what's going on. So, according to the documents put together by one of the elected officials right in the middle of this, Commissioner Matt Reddy, a really detailed plan was created to form a totally new nonprofit organization. This new thing would have a super board to oversee both of the hospitals, which would completely change how healthcare is governed in the whole region. Now, here's what you really have to get about this slide. This proposal, it wasn't just some vague idea scribbled on a napkin. No, this was a detailed, 50-plus page plan that laid out huge changes in governance. And get this, according to the source material, it was sent off as an official response without any formal public vote or authorization. Okay, so part two, behind closed doors. This is where we get into the really central legal question here. How is public business actually supposed to be done? In Washington state, the rules are super clear, and they're there to prevent, well, exactly what was alleged to have happened here.
The Open Public Meetings Act, you'll hear it called the OPMA, is really the foundation of transparent government in Washington. Its whole purpose, its reason for being, is to make sure that the public's business is done out in the open, so that all of us can see how our elected officials are making decisions that affect our lives.
And this slide, wow, it just lays out the conflict perfectly. The law says you can have these closed-door sessions for really specific, narrow reasons, like talking about the price of one single piece of property. But the allegation here is that this tiny exception was used to secretly discuss a massive strategic alliance. That's a move that legal analyses in the source material called a very stretched reading of the law.
And it gets even crazier. According to the documents, even after this formal proposal was sent out, the CEO sent this email to the publicly elected commissioners. He tells them point blank to keep this document private. I mean, that puts the board's legal duty to the public on a collision course with a directive from their own administration.
Which brings us to part three, a silenced whistleblower. Because as one of the commissioners started to push back on all this secrecy, the whole thing blew up in public, and it got incredibly dramatic. The meeting transcripts from that day are just fascinating to read. Commissioner Reddy makes a totally normal, formal motion to add the alliance to the agenda so they can finally talk about it in public. But you know what happened? That motion just died right there on the floor. It didn't even get a second from any of the other four commissioners. But Reddy kept at it. He kept asking, when is the public going to be told about this proposal? And the transcripts show the board chair just repeatedly shut him down, basically saying, hey, your question's been answered, there's nothing more to talk about. And right here, this is the crucial turning point. The fight goes from just a procedural block to the literal physical silencing of an elected official. So during the public comment period, Commissioner Reddy tries to speak, this time as a citizen, to tell the public about what he called secret negotiations. And that is when his microphone was cut off. So now we get to part four, the sheriff's report. Because he was unable to get a hearing from his own board, Commissioner Reddy took the pretty drastic step of filing a formal complaint with the county sheriff, and that triggered an external, independent investigation into the whole mess.
The report that came back from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office was a really big deal. As you can see, while the prosecutor decided not to file any criminal charges, the investigation itself concluded that the board had likely violated the Open Public Meetings Act, and it said that submitting the proposal without a public vote may constitute official misconduct.
Okay, on to our final section, censure and a lawsuit. Because believe it or not, the story doesn't end there. The way the board responded to the whistleblower and to the sheriff's report, well, it kicked off a whole new chapter in this conflict, one that moved things out of the boardroom and straight into the courtroom.
So, instead of looking at the sheriff's findings and maybe making some changes, the board's majority actually voted to formally censure Commissioner Reddy. This official resolution basically condemned him for exposing the secret process. They framed his actions not as whistleblowing, but as being disloyal and harmful to the hospital. And then, literally, the very next day, a citizen activist who's actually known for suing public agencies over transparency laws filed this lawsuit against the hospital district. It brings up the exact same secret deliberations, turning this from an internal fight into a formal legal challenge in court.
And all of this leaves us with a really fundamental question, one pulled right from the source material itself. What happens to public oversight? To accountability? What happens to democracy itself when dissent is silenced inside our own governing bodies? That's really the question at the very heart of this entire saga.